So now those who are outside, please do come in because we are commencing with.
This is a kind reminder. We are starting the first plenary session, so please be seated as soon as possible. A gentle reminder once again, we are about to commence the first plenary session. I would like to invite everybody to please be seated. We are about to commence the first plenary sessions. Please kindly, this is a kind request for everybody to please be seated at the auditorium. So welcome back everybody, and now we are going to move on to the first plenary session. So I would like to welcome Mr. Karthikeya Sarabhai, Ms. Neerja Shekhar, Ms. Huma Masood, Professor Chetan Solanki, Dr. Pramod Sharma, Professor Sanita Farkya, Please can you come up to the head table? I would like to invite Mr. Karthikeya Sarabhai, Ms. Neerja Shekhar, Ms. Huma Masood, Professor Chetan Solanki, Dr. Pramod Sharma, Professor Sanita Farkya to please come to the head table. Thank you very much. Let's begin the first plenary session.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So we are going to have this very interesting session, India at 75, Lessons for a Sustainable World. And this is to commemorate the Amrit Mahotsav, India's journey for 75 years since independence, and what we have done so far on the sustainability front, education front, and what is the road ahead. So we have the pleasure to welcome Madam Neerja Shekhar, IAS. She is Additional Secretary, Ministry of Information Broadcasting, Government of India, and she is a 1993 batch IAS officer of Haryana cadre. So she has been spearheading many departments in the Government of India. May I request Mr. Karthikeya Sarabhai to formally welcome and say a few words about the session and start the proceedings. Karthik bhai.
Okay. Yeah, it's here. No, it's here already on the screen. It's not done. Thank you, Ramuji. It's nice to now start the discussion after this. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. As Rambuji said, India is celebrating this 75 years as the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, and it's a time to do two things. One is India on many sectors is looking back at what happened in the 75 years, but even more importantly, our Prime Minister said, let us use this occasion to see what we really want to do between 75 and 100 years of Indian independence. So we are equally looking forward as we are looking back. I wanted to welcome this very interesting panel. We have, as Rambuji has already introduced, the people here, and we will introduce them again as we call upon each one to say something. At the beginning, I was going to just take you through some slides just to give a backdrop to this discussion. It's interesting that the first slide happens to be something which just before in the panel, Rajendra Singh ji mentioned about the Panch Mahabhut, and that is that slide there. But looking at really environmental education origins in India, we have to understand that it is deeply rooted in culture, and culture and religious practice is different, but something that just inherent in culture. You will rarely find an Indian who has a glass bottle, nice bottle, and puts it into the waste bin. You know, they'll think that maybe we'll wash it and we'll do something with it, but we don't do it. It's just instinctively done differently. I'm reminded of a couple which came from Portugal, and she was a Portuguese, but he was of Indian origin from Goa. And when she came to our house, she saw that in our shelves in the guest room, there were newspapers put on every shelf. So she said, you know, when I was married to this man in Portugal, I never knew why he was doing this. And he also didn't know why he was doing it, but it was being done. Only when I come to India, I recognize that it was something he got in his childhood. And it was just inherent in him that the newspaper was recycled, if you like, in something. And there are so many such things that people might not even know why they are doing it, because it's just inherent in the way we are. And I think a lot of the efforts are to see how these traditions continue. As you perhaps know, in 2015, the famous COP at Paris, India decided that we should share with the world many of our traditions, and they gave this responsibility to CEE to put together this book called Parampara, India's Culture of Climate-Friendly Sustainable Practices. And this was then done as the gift which was given to all the other delegates, launched by the Prime Minister in Paris. But the whole emphasis is this, and I thought it would be interesting to see that when we talk about 75 years, we also have a 5,000-year history of culture. So the 75 years as a nation is young, but so in a sense is our culture, which is much older. The foundations of what we might call environmental education, which were there in more recent times, I've put Mahatma Gandhi there first, but actually I should put it in reverse order. I should put Tagore as really just before him. There's a very interesting photo of Rabindranath Tagore just outside this wall. And just over the turn of that century, when he did Shantiniketan and then later Sriniketan, we have such interesting examples of how people relate. And it was not environmental education only in terms of nature, but also understanding agricultural systems, livelihoods. So the whole history of environment and education in India is come from a different root, which is to do with culture, practices, and things which connect to livelihoods of so many of us. Mahatma Gandhi then, of course, did his new education, his policy on education. There are schools running on it, but bringing this link between doing something and learning. And I think children learning themselves. So these are some of the backgrounds to which we went. In the initial period, I think it was very important that the Indian Constitution, which is a little unique in this, says in Article 48A that the Constitution enjoins the state to take measures to protect and improve the environment and safeguard the forest and wildlife of the country. So this 48A talks to the state. But interestingly, the next one, 51A, talks to citizens. Every citizen's responsibility to protect the environment. Now, that clause has had a huge impact on environmental education in this country. This one entry in the Constitution, because it was based on this that MC Mehta and others went to the Supreme Court, and I will come in a slide soon afterwards, which led to environmental education being made compulsory as a part of every formal educational process in India. So as we went and did this, there was the Kothari Commission, which was a landmark thing in those days. It was talking about concepts and principles, processes of how people relate to physical and biological environment. There were many things here at that time. In fact, an association which I was connected with, this is the Community Science Center, they were doing tests with putting mylar films on trees all over Ahmedabad to see what air pollution was like, and collecting water samples in the Ganges, doing other things. So there was a lot of interest. Environment at that time was still understood in ways which are not quite as broad, or not as broad as today. So there was one whole side of it which was pollution, another side of it was wildlife and interest in this. And of course WWF led it. I remember going into the WWF office for the first time and really being fascinated with Lakumarji Khachar, who used to be the educational officer at that time, and the way he took children out. And I think if you go back and ask, what do you remember? McDonald asked, what do you remember? But the thing which McDonald ultimately they remember is something which they did, more than even what they mugged up or learned. And that experience of that camp, I could even today, my first camp, I can describe in detail what happened on both those days I was in the camp. And that was the impact it had and continues to have. So direct connection. But there are these two streams, if you like. There was the education which came out of nature love, naturalists. There was another one which came out of pollution. We went further, going further. 72, of course, was the UN conference. And this is where the third stream really joins this thing. Because there was a whole debate in India whether India should even participate in this conference. And as you know, it was not such a big word. It was the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. The government in Sweden invited heads of government and heads of state from all over the world. And interestingly, only one head of government turned up. And that was our Prime Minister. And there she makes this connection between poverty alleviation and environment, that you cannot save the environment unless you save the poverty issue, but also vice versa, which is also equally important, that if you don't save the environment, you cannot solve poverty. So this whole debate, development, environment, that she put it as saying that two sides of the same coin. And I think that was the spirit of the morning session also, which mentioned that these are not really divergent things. They are made to look divergent, but they are actually convergent. I think Rajendra Singh's talk is all that how you increase the wealth in villages to the extent that they don't even want to migrate now. They feel that they can be there. And what then further on, what happened with the education revolution is that you could even reach the village, the best education through satellite communication without having to go places. So I think we have got into this. This was, of course, India had the curriculum for the 10-year school. A framework came out in 75. And this was again very important, and I'm sure we will hear more about various things which even today NCRT and people are doing. So Sunita ji is here with us, and how that whole thinking on happened. But there was in 77 the conference at Tbilisi, Georgia. Tbilisi, Georgia was the first major international conference following 72 in Stockholm, which really put down almost the first major thinking on what is environmental education. There was the development strength in it, and what Indira Gandhi had said at Stockholm was the connection with development. And here you had people like Anil Agarwal and others who were very much talking about connecting development with environmental issues. So you had the pollution type of industrial stream, you had the wildlife, trees and that stream, and then you had also the stream which was connecting up with jobs, livelihoods and development. So in India, the roots were very different. The roots in America, for instance, very heavily came from wildlife and others. And there were many people who came from that side. And you still see the sustainable development is a word which is not commonly used in America even today. ESD and things which we use here or the rest of the world uses, Europe uses. It's not used in, say, the North American Association and others. So at that time, several formal and non-formal initiatives began both by government, several NGOs, not mentioning all of it here. This was also the time when the Ministry of Environment was being formed in 84. 83, 84, this was leading up to a department being converted into a ministry. And at that time, some of us had worked in Ahmedabad in different sort of things. We were working with schools, we were doing something in wildlife, we were doing something with creating awareness on snakes, we were doing something in social forestry and others. And I remember Dr. Khoshu coming at that time, he was the first secretary, saying, Karthika, don't you think we should do this nationally? And I said, sure, if you partner, we can. And that commenced a very important partnership where it said that environmental education has to be one pillar of the transformation India wants to do. You can do research, you can do work on policy, you can develop new techniques so that fuel use, for instance, is less design, but ultimately it is behavioral change. Again, something which came out repeatedly in the morning session. Ultimately, it's the individual who has to change, the mindset, the mind frame. And as Rajendra ji would say, the culture itself. Our culture should be one where we don't have to consciously save something. It just comes naturally. It just should come naturally. So people should not even realize, why did I not just throw something away? Why did I wait and put it in the bin? As in fact it is. A friend from Switzerland is here today. I'm not seeing him right now. But I remember, oh, there you are. So I remember seeing this crossroad. And there was nothing around, nothing there. There was a crossroad. I was very far away. Our car was far away. And there was this car which had stopped on a red light. There was nowhere you could see a single light or a single policeman. But that red light, though, I said, would I ever see a scene like this in India? I doubt it. But here it was followed. It just came naturally. Wearing a seat belt comes naturally. So there are lots of habits. And COVID has also taught us that when it came to it, a habit like wearing a mask or doing certain things transformed so many people because of that. So the CEE was set up, and a little while later the CPR Environmental Education Center. These were two which worked with the ministry, and they complemented what, again, organizations like WWF or TERI or so many others, CSC, all of these were doing. They also that time came up with the National Environmental Awareness Campaign, the NEAC, and then there are several other ministry initiatives which came up, and this was to give small grants to anyone in the country who wanted to take an initiative, whatever environmental initiative. And it was a great way of engaging this thing. The environmental education, in educational policy came up, the National Policy on Education 86, which now formally states all this. There is a paramount need to create consciousness in the environment. It must permeate all ages and all sections, etc. So now you're seeing the rhetoric change. There was also this whole interest in localizing it. And at that time, the ministry, which is now called Education, it was called MHRD, and the Ministry of Environment, working very closely, Ministry of Education was keen on how to localize material, how to localize changes. and many of us worked very closely on that with them. Environmental education in the school system, there were a number of things there. There was a whole debate when it came to, sorry, take the next one. No, these are all ministry initiatives, but when it came to how we should do environmental education, there was a big debate whether it should be a separate subject or should it be infused. So what was that thing to be done? And this was a big debate, and MC Mehta was there and other things. I remember Sunita Madam, that I was sitting in the NCERT director's room while this negotiation was going on, and in another room MC Mehta was talking, and one of my other colleagues, Dr. Kiran Chokar, was sitting with him there, and we were discussing, and his main thing was that if you infuse it, how will I know whether it has happened or not? If it's separate, at least we will know. But if you infuse environmental education, but still it was accepted that we will find appropriate ways. So at least in the middle school level, let us infuse it into all subjects, not treat it as a separate subject. The National Green Corps, which came up, this was the eco school movement. A lot has been spread. Again, WWF started with many environment clubs, and then came the Supreme Court. Now, this was again using that one clause which I mentioned in the Constitution. The argument was, how can I protect the environment if you don't really teach me? And it was a powerful argument. And the Supreme Court in 91 said that no, it has to be compulsory. It was not quite taken so seriously then. In 2003, when it was again brought in, I think the judge said that we will put the education ministers in jail if they don't obey this. I mean, it was that serious. Everyone did it, but we are the only country. We must clap to ourselves or to our country that India is one of the only countries, or one of the first countries, to make environmental education compulsory all over the world. The National Curriculum Framework came up in 2005. This was again in response to directives by NCERT. 5 guiding principles of curriculum development were again connecting knowledge to life outside the school, ensuring that learning shifts away from rote methods, something which again Rajendra Singh spoke about today, enriching the curriculum so that it goes beyond textbooks. This is still a time when we don't all have mobile phones. You remember that? So today this whole thing becomes much easier. Making examinations more flexible. Now all these are easier to say, and I think we've had several sessions in NCERT, how do you actually do this? But this was all there. Habitat and learning came up, and the whole definition of what education is changed. Essentially in the EE curriculum, it's finally said through activities in 1 and 2 grades. Environmental studies became the rallying point for 3 to 5. Then it became the infusion model, and then more project-based activities. And Meena is here. We wrote a little green book, I remember in those days, which was used as the framework of how this basic framework was to be done and how we took a different approach. Now, this is something which I'm going to mention again, many of you must have heard it, that we were doing this project in Andhra Pradesh, environmental education in schools. And in one of the schools, St. Mary's, 10-year-old children, we were talking about things like footprint and other things. And here was something which was the handprint. They're not called quite that, but it was a handprint. And that was all over their materials and everything else. So I was asking my colleague Kalyani at that time, what is this? What is this handprint? What are they? And they said, just like the footprint means that we tread on the planet, and that everyone, if you are living, you have to tread. But the handprint is what we can do. We must all remember that we have inherent strength to protect the environment. So it seems such a great idea. In 2007, at a UNESCO 4th International Conference, and this was an official UNESCO conference held in Ahmedabad, we launched it. And I must say today that there are programs all over the world, and Pramodji can speak a little bit about it later, but there are programs all over the world which are using this concept of positivity. And I think it's one of the few concepts which starts in an Indian school with 10-year-olds and as a symbol, this is the hand of a girl called Shrija. It goes all over the world and it is used. So you can go to, there's a German website which is using this called the handprint. And we should again be proud of the fact that we gave something from our schools to a global environmental education thinking, which is the positive nature of action. Today everyone is talking about action, but this was one of the things which we gave. Then of course comes EE and ESD. We had, World Environment Day is celebrated June 5th, which is again the date of the Stockholm Conference in 72. So we got this thing and the Ministry of Environment called us and said, this is the campaign, we have to make everyone know. I said, what's the campaign? They said, it is CO2, carbon dioxide, kick the habit. And I said, how can you ask a villager who is abhi habit ho hi nahi hai, to ko habit kick karo? It sounds a bit ridiculous to say to people in India, kick the habit. So they said, yeah, that is true. We cannot kick the habit. Or some of us can, but not everyone. So we changed the word kick to pick. Pick right. We have the option of making the right choices now, rather than first making the wrong choices and then kicking that habit. We don't have to first have every one of us going by motor cars, then say now you move to pedestrian, now you move through public transport and pedestrian. We can straight away build our public transport in such a way that we would like to go there, and things like that. There is a number of things here. This was a very important change which happened. Friends of the Environment, again a national campaign reaching out to 2 lakh schools, eco schools in India with FE. Pramodji again is here, so he will mention this. It was a partnership which brought many of the FE programs in India, including the YRE. Then of course there was the Science Express which the ministry ran. It was an awareness creating thing which went around all the places where the broad gauge can run. For 3 years it went on biodiversity, 3 years on climate change. And when we did a study on this, several months after people had visited, we found that almost 30% increase in awareness. And we realized it cannot have happened because of this visit. So we went a little more depth and found that it was because of the train, they had got interested and they followed it up with so many activities that it led to this. Then the whole global citizenship. Now the NEP 2020, again I will leave it to NCRT to mention more about this. And then the way forward. So I thought I would use this just to give a quick perspective all the way from the Panchamahabhuta to Stockholm, to Rio, to where we are going and how we go forward. But India has taken some very important steps and many still need to be done. We were again with Pramod, we were trying to discuss that there is yet not a very good scientifically researched paper on what has happened after environmental education became compulsory. That whole generation is now adults. Are they really different from the generation just before them who didn't go through this program? We don't have that data. We all have anecdotal data with people, but I think there is research required here. And so those in the audience who are researchers, there are many things to be researched here as well. So that was the background. I think Rambu said give that before we start. But we have now a great honor in requesting Ms. Nirja Shekhar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Government of India, to give her special address. Thank you very much.
Dr. Karthik, good afternoon. Hello, can you hear me?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarabhai. Now I would like to invite Ms. Nirja Shekhar, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Government of India, to address the audience.
Hello, am I audible to anybody? Hello? Hello?
A very good afternoon to all of you. It's afternoon by the time we are here. And I'm indeed delighted to be a part of the 4th International Conference on Sustainability Education, being organized by the Mobius Foundation in partnership with key national and international environment and sustainability organizations. The theme, Building Connections and Partnerships for a Sustainable Future, resonates with each one of us, especially in the post-pandemic world. I'm happy to address this diverse gathering of environment and stability organizations focusing on various facets of sustainability education and learning. I believe the conference is being addressed by prominent persons and personalities from across the globe, think tanks, environmentalists, practitioners, educationists. And I'm sure these 2 days will be a great meeting of minds and we'll be able to come up with recommendations and a way ahead in this area. When my kids were growing up, I used to teach one very specific thing to them, that there is one thing that is going to last with them till they are alive, till the last moment, till their last breath. And it would not be their parents, it would not be their friends. It would be their body, the human body. And not in the spiritual sense, but in the technical and the physical sense. Because the better care we take, I would say that as a mother to teach them good eating habits and good lifestyle, but the emphasis was the better care we take of our body, our organs, the longer we can live. The same is for our planet. The more we take care of our Mother Earth, of our planet Earth, the longer we can have life on Earth, the longer it will sustain for all of us. So it's our planet that needs care and nurture, and it is the planet that is going to sustain life forever, hopefully, for all of us. COVID has been a huge lesson for humanity. How not to mess with nature. Sustainability and sustainable development have re-entered our active vocabulary. As the Earth's resources are dwindling and our environment is being increasingly degraded by human activities, the imbalance that we've created is slowly interfering with our survival and sustenance. Environmental pollution, growing human population, depletion of natural resources, climate changes, calamities, and disasters are all environmental concerns that need our immediate attention. In the last 75 years since independence, India has worked hard for a sustainable future in her own way. The primary focus on education and health has led to two major areas of success in health and education, which we can see has shown in making significant improvement in life expectancy of average Indians, which was 32 years at the time of independence and over 70 years today. This in itself suggests the role played by awareness, education, and accessible health systems over a period of time. The Green Revolution made India a self-reliant nation in food grain production, supported by improved varieties of seeds and wide use of fertilizers and other chemical inputs. India's nuclear program brought us amongst the top nuclear countries in the world, in addition to the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council. The Indian space program, led by our very dear Mr. Vikram Sarabhai, and we are very glad that you're here and I can talk about it. The Indian space program emphasized the role and importance of space technology and has again catapulted us into a niche area of technology and placed us amongst the top countries, nations in the world. And we haven't looked back since. Today we have the data revolution, and we've been able to provide affordable data in the hands of all Indians, where people in the media and entertainment sector have joined hands to provide educational, entertainment, cultural, and other content to the people. As a result, this entire industry of producing content for the people has seen a paradigm change. Thereafter, the National Education Policy of 2020. It has continued the focus of the country's development in the right direction. It states that the purpose of the education system is to develop good human beings capable of rational thought and action, possessing compassion and empathy, courage and resilience, scientific temper, and creative imagination with sound ethical moorings and values. So well stated. We can say that the National Education Policy has sought to align with the aspirations of the 21st century India. Our systems, including the educational system, in the last 75 years have now taken us to the next level of our aspirations, which the Prime Minister talked about as we being an aspirational society and moving towards a developed country during this Amrit Kal till 2047. So sustainability education, while promoting an understanding of the connections between environment, economy, and the society, blends in various pedagogical techniques for achieving environment literacy, critical thinking, civic engagement, and so on. Our issues of concern today are also issues concerning sustainable development, understanding the causes of climate change, the need for disaster risk reduction, respecting biodiversity, reducing poverty, and having more sustainable patterns of consumption. In 2003, as we've just talked about it, the environmental education was made compulsory in the formal educational system by the Supreme Court of India. Ever since, environmental education has been imparted in most schools and colleges in the country, but the idea of sustainable development in the context of respecting the climate in the long term, that's an idea which is still developing and needs to be brought home emphatically. As we look around, you would have seen in the people around you that the people who are most at peace with themselves are the people who are in harmony with their ecosystem, with the environment, with nature. Tagore also said that the highest education is that which does not merely give us information, but makes us live in harmony with all existence. In India, we've had quite a few experiences in wholesome education where nature has been a part of the educational curriculum. We have had Shanti Niketan, started by the Tagore family, which is now a university. We've had the well-known experiment in homeschooling by the Sarabhai family in Ahmedabad. I read about in a recent book, so the idea of that homeschooling is very fresh in my mind, where every student turned out to be an achiever. We have many schools located amidst natural landscapes, with conserving and enhancement of natural environment being the core values. Mobius Foundation's World Environment School is the next kid on the block to watch out for. So we're all looking at it as an experiment, as an established system in education, which many will be able to copy from. So today's educators have a crucial responsibility to raise the next generation into eco-conscious, self-sufficient world citizens who understand the immediacy of environmental sustainability. According to UNESCO data, almost half, in fact less than half of national curriculum frameworks of 100 countries reviewed by them had no reference to climate change. The rest mentioned climate change in the documents, but the depth of inclusion was very minimal. This shows that there is an urgent need to integrate and include climate change sustainability education in our core curriculum across all levels and in disciplines of learning, It should also be woven into our policies and programs, and we should all work together to boost sustainability in education, where Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, where I come from, can also play a huge role in taking the message across to the people. With these words, I wish all the best to all the teachers and educators, young professionals, experts, representatives of schools, education networks, young scientists, professionals, practitioners who are all here to support this area and who are all working towards creating a sustainable future for the citizens of this world. I wish you all and the conference a huge success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Nirja Sekharji. I think you set the tone for, this is the first plenary, and really you set the tone. I think we all very much appreciate your intervention here, particularly when you said that the theme of this conference very well resonates with post-pandemic situation, because we all are trying to reconnect and rebuild the hope. The other thing that I think that's very inspiring to all of us is like we all must care for the human body to live longer. So that's why we must also care and nurture our planet, the earth also, to sustain life on it. And the one message that goes, because beyond 75 years and next 25 years, I think that the aspiration, the government of India has an aspiration of all of us to become a developed world. Of course, with the development, I think sustainability is imperative. So we have now Professor Chetan Solanki. He is waiting us. He is the chairperson of the National Curriculum Framework Environment Education sector. And he is a professor at the Department of Energy, Science and Engineering at IIT Bombay. He is running a Energy Swaraj Yatra and touring the whole country to promote solar energy, particularly the renewables, a very noble deed that he is doing. So he is right now in the field. He has just joined us, connected to us for a very brief period. So Professor Solanki,
Yeah, am I audible?
He be allowed to come, Dr. Solanki. Connect him.
I am connected. Am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Solanki, we can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Ram, for giving me this opportunity. As you said, I am on a 11 years long Energy Swaraj Yatra. I pledged not to go home for 11 years, and I live in a bus, and today is my 646th day that I am traveling in the bus. Also, I would like to make a correction that I'm not a chairman of a National Focus Group on Environment Education. I am just a member of this National Focus Group on Environmental Education. So I would like to first put two perspectives, why I'm doing this yatra, and I keep saying I also written in my book on Energy Swaraj that we, the modern humans, we are the most evolved species ever existed. But I think still we have not understood the word sustainability itself. And therefore bringing into education and curriculum and actually passing on to our children is a very distant thing. For a very simple sustainability could be, but the left hand side is equal to the right hand side, that has to be the most fundamental way of defining what it is. And unfortunately, most of the things that we do in our life, in our modern economic life, the left hand side is not equal to right hand side. For a very simple thing, let me bring this perspective. I keep talking everywhere. that the planet and all its resources are fixed and finite. The size of the planet is fixed. Irrespective of how much your population, we cannot change the size of the planet. Every resource on the planet, whether it is water, soil, forest, rivers, everything is fixed and finite. And therefore, the first fundamental the unfortunate part is that with all our so-called development, we are still trying to produce more, consume more, grow our GDP more. But when you look at from fundamental level, it is not possible because everything is finite. Everything that you are taking from a finite body, how is it possible that you continuously produce more and consume more? So that's a fundamental violation of law of nature on sustainability. You can't do this. We can only do this by the act of stealing, and that's why the Earth Overshoot Day, that is a day that defines what is the capacity of Mother Nature to regenerate resources in a year and how many days we take to consume it. And mostly this year, the Earth Overshoot Day came on 28th July, which means from 29 July till the end of December, we are going to live on a stolen resources. So let us realize this, that we, the people who are designing this sustainability curriculum and trying to impart education, I believe themselves do not understand what it is all about. Second thing, again a fundamental, as Gandhiji said, that second important law of being sustainable is not the mass production, but production by masses. This is again fundamental because every time when you do mass production, it results in unequal distribution. Unequal distribution will cause inequity in the society, and inequity will also bring the lack of peace, the violence. And that's what is happening on this planet. Last 30, 40 years, science is growing, technology is growing, but brotherhood is not growing. The love between people is not growing, rather violence is growing. So this is again a fundamental violation of the sustainability of life on this planet. So I think we, the older people, have to first understand, and then let us think about how do we pass on to our next generation. Like I, as a member of environmental education on the National Focus Group, what we try to do is try to bring this aspect of the nature that our old tradition, our old culture, and Dr. Karthikeyan also mentioned that it has to become the part of culture that we don't have to exert any extra effort to behave in a sustainable manner. Fortunately, in our Vedas, in our ancient scripture, how to respect the nature is very, is there. Even we know how to respect the non-livings also. So that is what we try to incorporate in the national curriculum. Also, we try to bring this fact that climate change is an emergency now, and therefore you cannot behave in a business as usual manner. The unfortunate part again is we're all behaving in a business as usual manner, especially when we see that the climate clock, it's a ticking, and what we see all over the world right now in front of our eyes, that the villages are disappearing under the sea, the floods are there everywhere, the forest fires is everywhere. So climate change is not just increasing, but it is accelerating because our actions to correct the climate change much smaller than the causes that that is increasing climate change. So I think as IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, clearly mentioned that we need to change, we need to make a change in energy use pattern because the energy uses has been the cause of climate change. And the immediate change cannot be a plantation drive. The drastic and immediate change cannot be making the world plastic free. The drastic and immediate come when we reduce your carbon emission drastically and immediately, which I believe the world doesn't understand. Despite being a Paris Agreement, 181 countries signing it legally, that we all need to reduce our carbon emission by 2030 by 50% almost. The real fact of life is that rather than decreasing, every single year the carbon emission is rising with 1.7% rate. So we, the modern human, doesn't understand. In fact, I tend to believe that we do not even want to correct it. And we all almost in a mode that dekhenge jab hoga, right? But it's already hitting on our doorstep. So again, I am on my yatra, 11 years, going to live in a bus, and the whole purpose of this is to create a public moment, because last 30 years after Kyoto Protocol, after Paris Agreement, after 26 COP meeting, it has been proven beyond doubt that the government policies, the government measures, the projects, the subsidies is not proving enough, and it will not be enough, because governments all over the world are elected for a very short time. They have limited resources and they have limited time. Every individual consumes resource, every individual consumes energy, and therefore every individual contributes to the climate change, and therefore it has to be the every individual's effort to live sustainably on this planet. My summary would be that let us all understand the bigger group, the group which is going to die in next 20, 30, 40 years. We understand. Let us not leave behind the planet which is not even livable. So for the God's sake, let us ensure that we leave behind the air that our children can breathe. Let us leave behind the water that our children can drink. Let us leave behind a soil that our children can eat food without any chemicals. If not for anything, if not for sake of sustainability or anything, at least for sake of your own children and our own children, let us leave behind the planet livable. Let we, the older generation, understand sustainability first, act accordingly, and pass on a livable future to our future generation. So with this, thank you very much for inviting me here. I wish I would have been there in person and discussed with much more. Unfortunately, not there. We are also organizing a conference in Delhi called ARE, Action for Restoring Environment. ARE, and the tagline is, are we taking enough actions? And the short answer is no, we are not taking enough actions. And we need to pose this question to every leader, whether it's a political leader, a spiritual leader, industrial leader, scientific leader, academic leader. Let us all pose this question to everyone. Are we taking enough action? Answer is no. Then what is enough action that we need so that we can mitigate the global warming level below 1.5 degrees centigrade? How fast that action should be? What should be the shape and size of the action? Unfortunately, we do not know what should be the action itself. Is actually missing in a big way. So I invite all of you to be part of the R conference in Delhi. We are also offering many solutions what can be done. A lot of technical solutions also happening in this conference. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my note. As I'm talking to you, I'm in my bus, and my bus is actually moving. I'm in Punjab right now. And
Thank you very much, Professor Solanki. Thank you so much for your insight into the whole scenario and how the NCF focus group on environment education. We all are looking forward to that curriculum framework for the whole country, and that is so important for future of environment education in country. Next, I would like to invite Dr. Vibha Dhawan, Director General, the Energy and Resources Institute, TERI. She is there since 1985, a veteran scientist, administrator, and of course, researcher. She was the Vice Chancellor of TERI School of Advanced Studies. So, Professor Dhawan.
Thank you for your kind words. Shri Pradeep Varmanji, Ms. Nirja Shekhar, Dr. Rambhuj, other dignitaries on the stage, and all the participants. Well, we all talk of sustainable world. And I personally feel that it is responsibility of each one of us if we are moving towards sustainability. We talked about kind of environmental education that's need to be given to school children as well as a subject perhaps at the college level as well. But let's also look at what kind of environment education we had undergone. I'm sure our parents had taught us so many things on sustainability, which was never taught as a subject, but it was something which was practiced at every household level. Reuse, it is not something which we are talking today Earlier, it was that whatever you are consuming, whether it's a cloth, whether it's a bag, it will be something that it will be used till it is unusable any further. Unlike today, if we look at the society as a whole, the way we are consuming things, and it is that Mahatma Gandhi long back, he had said that this earth has enough for everyone needs but not greed. So we had become greedy. Pandemic, yes, very bad, whatever has happened to at the global level, it has taught us many things. First of all, let's look at what happened to the environment. And I think we should move away from the word save the planet. Rather, what we are doing today is to save ourselves. Because planet was doing very well when there was no activity by the humans. So therefore, it is for our own survival that we are talking about, that we need to take action. We are already late. The society we are talking of, that it has become very consumeristic. Look at the children, and remember 20, 30 years back, my children, my age, when I was going to the school. When I was going to the school, I was using public bus to go. When my children were young, I'll leave them for the school bus, but we'll walk down to the bus station. Today, you look at, when you go to the bus station, there are 10, 20 cars standing. Rather, it's difficult for bus to stop because all the parents, they go on cars to drop their children. Children, what is their exercise? Do you let them play outside? Do you let them enjoy the nature? The excuse, usual excuse is there is too much of traffic. Yes, there is no doubt, because around the parks also there are too many vehicles, and therefore you are a little shy to send or you feel unsecure to send your child to the park. What is happening? Screen time, it's unbelievable. They are always on the mobile. They are playing games there. Even the cricket they play on the mobile rather than playing outside. And the worst thing which happened during pandemic was that now they know very well how to use the technology for various purposes. And they're using it. So which is bad, which I personally feel that somewhere we have to bring back that in the schools, that it is not just the books. Yes, books are very important. And the habit of reading is very important, which is also over a period of time, it's becoming less and less. But then at the same time, let them work. Let's have eco clubs. Let them work and appreciate nature. There can be nature walks organized for children. And I'll draw your attention to one of the programs that Department of Biotechnology launched long back. It was called DNA. It was DBT, Nature Awareness Program. So under which it was that the schools, and especially in the rural area, which have no access to the technology, and it happened pre-COVID, so that time even virtual lectures was something not heard of. So to those students, they were given microscopes so that they can see what kind of microorganisms exist, what is there on the leaf, and so on. So that kind of training was given both to the teachers and the students. And I thought that was very important. Then we convened, of course, there were lectures organized by authorities like Professor Swaminathan, so they understand about Green Revolution and so on. So that is how the kids were taught about various subjects at the school level. And thereafter, once they started growing medicinal plants, then they knew how the variation occur from plant to plant. What is being taught to them in the class about healthy food or balanced food will only once they started realizing that each leaf tastes differently, each leaf has a different function. Then they started appreciating that, yes, we need to eat all kinds of foods, which became important for them. We talk of sustainability. It is at all levels. And as I said, repeatedly say that we have to come out of this consumerism. And somewhere children also have to value that it is as important as them to go to a national park and admire nature, and not just looking into that who had gone to which country kind of a thing. They should be told that, as rightly mentioned, we have to take care of our body. And that is where, on one hand, we are there is a problem of air pollution. And really speaking, we don't have to save money for our children. They'll earn for themselves, but they will not be able to buy air. How many of us has imagined 20 years back that we will never be able to drink water from the tap, and it will be either RO or it will be bottles on our tables? So if we continue on this path, perhaps we'll also be carrying oxygen cylinder at the back so that we can breathe air in certain months. And it is also to be told to them that they also can contribute. And they are very good, let me tell you. They are the ones perhaps who are going to teach us the lesson. I have seen, like, just sharing one personal experience, I have 2 grandchildren, and when the single-use plastic was banned, so their mother just told them, don't throw this polythene in the school because otherwise your teacher may get upset. And the answer was, why should I use it then? And immediately he went to the kitchen and picked up a box and said, I'll carry my cake in this rather than a plastic bag. So they should be told, and they are very intelligent, they'll follow us. And it is that it's not just teachers, it is not just curricula, it is responsibility of each one of us. First of all, set an example by ourselves, and second is correct whosoever is around us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Vivadhavat. You rightly exhorted Mahatma Gandhi, there is enough for everyone's need, for not the greeds, and that is the sense of sustainability. May I invite now Dr. Huma Masood. We have been colleagues for over a decade in UNESCO. She is in the education sector, and of course working as a gender specialist, but also looking after the education for sustainable development, the ESD, and that is our common strand. While I was in UNESCO, we did so many things together. So Dr. Huma Masood, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rambuj, my friend, my colleague, and also a mentor who has always guided us how to pursue in this area. And we did definitely a lot of projects together as intersectoral projects between education and the science sector. And I always call him my guru. So it's such a pleasure and an honor to be here among all of you. I also take this opportunity by, of course, thanking all the DICE members over here who are present here and who gave us such good learning and knowledge, and also to our partner now for 4 years, I think, and we are going from strength to strength, and that is Mobius Foundation, for organizing the 4th ICSE 2022 event, and for also inviting UNESCO to the previous session, of course, where my colleague Mr. Benabo was there, and for this plenary session, which is on India at 75, Lessons for a Sustainable World, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. You know, when developing and ratifying the 2030 agenda, we did see that the world did come together in 2015 to set itself for the 17 common goals, which were commonly referred as Sustainable Development Goals. And this was in pursuit of an ideal world. So I think we are also talking about this ideal world now. And I think it's high time that we start to really, do something about it. But we know that this is a far-fetched idea. UNESCO has been stressing upon the fact that almost all the nations of the world have to actively work together to create this ideal world. This was mentioned, I think, in a previous session that many countries, I think number was almost like 100, and they do not have a curriculum, on environment and sustainability. We also heard that, how we have progressed from environment education to now we are talking in our present National Policy for Education 2020 as ESD, and we talk about global citizenship education and education for sustainable development. COVID-19 pandemic, we know, provided us with an interesting insight into answering the questions which are unanswered. To put it simply, while the pandemic has indeed been disastrous, there's still a silver lining. We must learn from the impact of the pandemic, the fault lines that have been exposed, particularly when it comes to healthcare and education. And this can provide an interesting learning and experiences for all of us. Let me take this example of education. The worldwide, there was a shutdown of schools for students, and there was this shift which was like online, and we know that many students could not actually, were unable to participate in the education. Even from the gender perspective, as my colleague mentioned, that I also deal with gender, there has been an unequal impact for both boys and girls, also for children with disabilities, who were also, who suffered and needed more care. This event even highlights two things. First, that if in case of emergency, we must shut down in-person learning, then we must ensure that the alternatives are robust enough to include all people. Further, as now we are experiencing learning losses for all students for up to 2 years, so during the duration so far, we must ensure that our alternative methods of learning are able to achieve significant results. While I think looking at the past is important, we must not dwell into much upon it. Rather, we must use it as an example to move forward. As said by George Santayana, that those who do not learn from the past are condemned to repeat it. So the smart development which we are talking about, I think the previous session and even in this session, by which UNESCO means, is long-term sustainable development. And this is essential for a growing economy. UNESCO stresses on the fact that unless sustainability is taken to be a key priority across all countries, the consequences may be quite severe. As we speak today in Delhi, I think all of us are aware of the negative impact that climate change has had on the planet. From irregular, I think we all watch on television every day, irregular weather patterns, crop failure, migrations. We are at the brink of major planetary crisis, and I think this is not new what I am saying, but there is hope. Hope that lies in sustainable development, both at national, regional, and local level. As we call it at UNESCO, we must now make efforts to green the economy. We are also talking about greening schools. I heard there'll be a school, which will be like first environment school, which is foreseen. I hope so it happens and it becomes a reality. This must be a broad scale effort which should cover all the sectors of the economy. Governments, businesses, and companies must now make sustainability a key pillar of development. We see behind a lot of people who have partnered, and I think the focus of this particular initiative is partnership, and that is what would make this as a reality. As world is grappling to come out of the unprecedented pandemic, environmental health has been recognized as the key of sustainable and resilient recovery. we do talk about health, but I think what is important is environmental health. If that is checked, if that is taken care of, I think our own health will also be in place. And therefore, human survivability absolutely depends of living in harmony with nature. I think in pursuit of the ambition of Atmanirbhar Bharat, as has been the pursuit of our Prime Minister, UNESCO is collaborating with the Government of India and working on several key initiatives. And these you may have seen, I think outside we have also one of our stalls in which we have presented how we are looking at engendering and gender transformative changes in the lives of girls. We are looking at, we have also partnered with a private sector organization called Procter & Gamble, where we are looking at menstruation health and hygiene and how menstruation, how we see, like, when we talk about environment, how do we look at that these pads are eco-friendly pads? I mean, a very simple thing, but we don't look at it from that perspective. So I think very soon we'll be launching this we have created some modules, and we like to share with as many people and schools and institutions and schools and students. That would be our new project, and which will have a very good dimension. Then we also bring out a state of education report, and this year we are bringing out one on artificial intelligence, and on 20th of September this would be launched. We are also looking at the UNESCO 1970 Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing the illicit import, export, and transfer of ownership of cultural properties. We also look at culture, as was mentioned in the first presentation, that how the cultural dimension, to protect our environment is very important. And I think this is what we should be promoting, because India is not like just 75 and 100 years, institution. We have a history of 5,000 years, and there is so much of learning there. We also have a global network of, I think Rambuji is the one who pioneered it and, who has been working tirelessly in this area of bioreserves, which are currently, which counts to 727 sites in 131 countries all over the world, including 22 transboundary sites. And these biosphere reserves in South Asia are, very important element in overcoming the doomsday ecological landscapes. It is important to increase the number of biosphere reserves in South Asia, and I'm sure you must have heard from our colleague Benno maybe, on this aspect. And since biodiversity is the living fabric of our planet, it underlines human well-being in the present and the future. Its rapid decline, which threatens the nature and people alike. And therefore, according to one of our global assessment report on biodiversity and ecosystem, which was released in 2019, at the UNESCO headquarters, the main global drivers of biodiversity loss are, the climate change, invasive species, overexploitation of natural resources, pollution, urbanization, and that is how we are stressing the earth. And therefore, it is important that collectively we should try and work together, and see how we can build the capacity of our planet and ensure to a greater extent, all what is required and needed to reverse this whole system and ensure that we have clean air, high quality drinking water, adequate food, and healthy habitat to ensure that our ecosystem services continuously to benefit the humanity, which seriously affecting, the unbalance of nature which is happening. Whether we look at nature from an environmental, cultural, or religious point of view, it is our responsibility. And clearly, it is in our interest to respect the environment. over the past 50 years, much has been achieved for the conservation of nature, including the establishment of conservation areas and the signing and ratifications of several international conventions, which must have been mentioned by my colleague. So I don't want to go further on that. And, I would just, since I think we do not have much time over here, so I think what is important is, and I would also like to mention that we have also brought out two very recent documents, which is Braided Rivers, which may have been mentioned, and it's also outside, and Pocket of Hopes, which is again, focuses on biosphere reserves in our country. And so please have a look at that. And but this particular recent document looks at sustainable development and the people's nature, how complex it is. And with this, I would like to close because I think the time is running out. And therefore, thank you very much again for this opportunity. And we hope to continue in this effort with the support of Mobius Foundation. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Umaji. I think very comprehensive. And of course, UNESCO, great work you all are doing. And I have been part of this whole, as you rightly said, World Network of Biosphere Reserves. These are really learning laboratories for sustainability education. Now, without losing any time, I would like to invite Dr. Pramod Sharma. I think many of you must be knowing. He is the Senior Director at FE, Foundation for Environment Education, Denmark. And Pramod, you have to be very brief. Try to.
Thank you. I know I am standing between you and the lunch. So, without wasting time, I'm from, as mentioned, from Foundation for Environmental Education. Can I see it on the screen, please? Sure. So we are a member-based organization present in almost 82 countries and working with 5 programs. 3 are focused on young people and 2 with corporate sector, with Blue Flag one for the beaches and Green Key for the hotels. And my journey with See India started in 2004. And it started with the start of the decade for education for sustainable development, and also when the syllabus and everything was being laid out by NCERT with for compulsory environment education. And one of the questions that was there before me in around 2010 and 12 was that what impacts we are making, how we are changing, or what is happening as in terms of learners, as it was mentioned, shiksha or like teaching or learning, what is being learned and kind of thing. And so I decided to do my doctoral research on what is happening in the classroom in Gujarat. And this data was collected from 500 schools, around 4,000 students. And I found that the level of environmental literacy as total score was very moderate. It was not very high, but and particularly on the competency and knowledge level, they were very low at that time. And then interesting thing that I found in that research, that higher the level of education of the mother, of the child, the better the environmental literacy was, but not in, when we look at the behavioral component. For the behavioral component, I found that children whose mother had education less than secondary were doing better. And then there is an element of culture and value which is coming in, and which was mentioned by many of the speakers in this session and the previous session, where the child learns from home, and when the affluenza has not affected them, they live within the means and conserve whatever resources they have. And there is a word called frugality on that, that how do you achieve the maximum out of minimum in that situation. Educational board seem to have an effect on environmental literacy. The ICSE students from ICSE board performed the best compared to, followed by CBSE, International Board, and the Gujarat Education Board. But again, when we are looking at public schools, students who are coming from maybe less privileged backgrounds scored better on the behavioral front. So ultimately, sticking with the values and culture that the community they come from and showing those behaviors or actions that were conserving nature and environment. And I know this is a favorite topic of Kartikeya also in terms of promoting camping program. And what I found was the students who were attending camping program had a higher mean score. And this was also highlighted that the importance of nature education, experiencing nature, going on nature walk, and how connecting with nature is important. The next part, and this is a challenge, I think we don't realize it, and is that we are getting more female students doing better in environmental education. We get them more interested in activities and projects, and we are not being able to attract males as compared to. And I have been looking at data of various campaigns for last 2 years. Followers are on Facebook, social media, and asking that question to many colleagues around. And what I found that the gap is between 60-40 or 65-35. That's a big gap where we are not. And yesterday we had that youth conclave, and not a single male speaker was there. That speaks a lot about the gender gap that is there in environmental education, and that is basically what we call an elephant in the room that we need to address quickly, because they are there in business and all places making big decisions. And that led to another study that I did with management students, and attitude was positive, but they were not able to even differentiate between quality of life and standard of living. They only looked at sustainable development from a perspective of environmental sustainability, not from the social sustainability or standard or basically human development index. And 72% did not understand the term greenwashing, management students in IIM Raipur. They didn't understand the term greenwashing, and that then is a challenge in terms of environmental education when they are getting into business education and are not aware of the sustainability or environmental aspects of business. And they clearly put profit maximization as the goal of business as what they thought should be there as part of the business. And then they were in favor of eco labels, but not many of them were aware of the eco labels. And the last point is also important, that nearly half of them were of the opinion that consumers will not pay higher for environment-friendly products. If they go with this perception and perspective, what change I think we can anticipate when they go and take decisions in business places, that if they believe that there is no market. And I think that is also reflected in research, where 3-star appliances are sold more compared to 4 or 5-star in Indian market. Key recommendations, if you ask me, capacity building of stakeholders, curriculum developers, textbook writers, teachers, trainers, just not focus on teachers, but everybody who is part of the educational catchment. Child-centered activity learning approaches, eco-school is one, Paramitra is second, WWF is doing their own work. Many projects are happening where we are putting children at the center of learning and asking them to lead projects, because it is transformation that needs length of engagement and depth of engagement. And the important part is also bridging the gap, making basically males are at the margins of ESD. We need to basically acknowledge and bring them in, and also the support national level research. Kartikeya mentioned about it. I did it, but I didn't have any baseline to compare with. But that data, that report is available. Somebody can pick that up and find out what is the situation now and compare whether we are progressing or is there a change happening or not. And the last is also important, that environmental education has to be consistent. We need to get out of event or days as primary means of environmental education. It's not about observing days and doing rallies or protests, but it is about consistent activities that should happen in the classroom. And to support this, we are doing this campaign Running Out of Time, where we will be running from Glasgow, the site of COP26, to the Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, COP27, covering 767 kilometers, 732 stage over 38 days. either running, biking, or sailing, just using renewable or human resource energy, mobilizing that better, which is basically this message, asking countries to mandate compulsory quality climate education at all level of teaching and learning, just not in the school system. Thank you. I hope I was within my time.
Thank you very much. We are really running out of time. So, yeah, now I invite Dr. Sunita Farkia. She is going to represent Director NCERT. She is head of the DESM in NCERT. Dr. Sunita.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rambhutji, Honorable Chairperson and dignitaries on the dais and the August gathering in this convention hall. I would speak very less, but I will quote some examples. I will start with my speech with a quote from Sanskrit, that is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It is a very small phrase and meaning it is giving all the sustainability in itself. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam means the whole earth is one family, means each and every species and all the nature, all the natural components, all the natural resources, everything is one family. And if we internalize this, then sustainability will come naturally. So this is the quote which has been given in our NCERT class 10 textbook, where we teach sustainable use of natural resources. While doing researches in NCERT, I came across with few exemplars. Once I was there in a very interior village of Chhattisgarh, because we are talking about the infusion of environmental education in other subjects. So I am giving one very small example which I have come across. There a teacher was teaching to the students. He was taking the multigrade teaching and in multigrade teaching environment he was teaching to 5th standard and 3rd standard. Because we were intervening there in that school, so the teacher, I have seen that he had developed a herbal garden with all his students, and we were very happy to see the herbal garden. At that particular day when I observed, the teacher had given the assignment to the students that, my dear students, you go and just collect ripe mango from the mango tree. But it should be ripe, it should not be raw. After taking instructions from the teacher, students went to the garden. Teacher was observing them from a little away, and I was also with the teacher. He said, you go and collect only ripe mango. And students, they were taking this instruction and they went there, they collected ripe mango. Now there are two class of students, 5th and 3rd. Third grade student and 5th grade student. Teacher told them that you can take mango from, if they are
ripen, then you can pluck them. Okay, they collected all the mangoes which were there on the ground, and then they tried to see whether the mango is ripened or it is raw. How is it? Then they collected ripened mango from the tree. After collecting those ripened mango in the basket, they came to the teacher. Now teacher again instructed them, now you do one thing, you just try to measure the length and width of this mango. Now measuring is one of the skill that students were doing it. Class 5th students were measuring, class 3 students were learning. So here teacher had put in the value in the student that they have to pluck only those mango which are ripened. And to pluck the mango, students were taking help of each other. Here I want to say that means they were making some students horse and they were climbing through that, or then they were plucking the mangoes. So here I want to say that how we can infuse the values, the environment, the science as well as social science in one concept. So this is how NCERT textbooks have infused environment at middle stage, at secondary stage, at higher secondary stage, because we have to learn science behind the concepts of environment. And the other thing which I want to say, because I would like to conclude, because we are time is running fast. So we have to bring the attitudinal changes. We have to bring the action in our whatever we are learning. And the other thing is, in NEP 2020, it speaks about the community involvement. I have learned so many things from community. I have seen that there are some community, I interacted with the community at Baripeda. It is a very small village where community has brought the water on the earth. They have developed some water conservation systems. I have seen some communities which are really working in biodiversity conservation. They are developing some sacred groves. So community participation, NEP 2020 talks about community participation that we have to bring in the school education, and how to bring it in the school education. For that we have to develop the teachers. Teachers may bring such kind of pedagogy, innovative pedagogy with community involvement to bring the attitudinal changes for environmental education. So with this, I would like to thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sunita, Professor Sunita. Now I would like to invite Dr. Ramboj to present the first memento to Ms. Nirja Shekhar. And the second memento will be presented to Mr. Karthikeya Sarabhai. Mr. Karthikeya Sarabhai. Third memento will be presented to Dr. Vibha Dhawan. Ms. Huma Mazood, please accept the moment. And Dr. Pramod Sharma. Next memento, please accept the memento, Dr. Pramod Sharma. And last but not least, Professor Sunita Farkya. Thank you very much, Dr. Ramboj. I think the first plenary session is over for now, and the lunch is ready at the lobby area. So I invite all of you to enjoy your lunch, but please be available at 2:20 in the auditorium for the second plenary session. Thank you so much.
Real life experience. Real life experience.
Sir?